Since this film is one of the last few entries in the soon-to-be extinct DCEU, the Flash movie, I actually like this one. It's not perfect, but when it comes down to it, I had a fun and entertaining time. Well, this movie took a long time to get made, but at least it turned into a decent comic book film when it comes down to it. So the story of this film is that Barry Allen, he goes back in time to save his mother. And from doing that, he brings about the Flashpoint paradox, which brings unintended consequences to his timeline. And from there, it's a film that I was satisfied with. Not everything about this movie was great, to be honest. And quite frankly, this one, it does have more enjoyable moments than Black Adam or even Shazam 2 had. And as much as I had liked this movie, it's not Man of Steel, it's not Batman v Superman. Those are some of my favorite DC films, and the reason being is because I do like for those characters to be dark and gritty, and it's a nice change of pace from the typical MCU stuff. And speaking of which, this movie does have tonal issues. At certain parts, it is a serious moment, but a couple of minutes later, it's undercut by a joke. It had annoyed me a little bit, but not as much if this film didn't have good storytelling. Seeing a more mature Barry Allen is a nice change of pace considering how jokey he was in the previous movies, especially considering how he handles himself in most situations. Nonetheless, when it comes down to it, this is a cool comic book movie, and while it's not an outright disaster, there are some things I wish that could have been improved upon in this one. This movie had a lot of good things going for it, particularly the acting. Ezra Miller, he did a good job playing Barry Allen, especially two Barry Allens. Now, I'm not gonna lie though, younger Barry Allen kind of got on my nerves. He was annoying, he was obnoxious, he was immature. I get that's a younger version of the character, but every time when he was laughing, I was like, man, this is cringe-worthy. Sasha Calle, great job playing Supergirl. I like this interpretation of the character because a lighter version would have not worked at all for this movie. And I know a lot of people going into this film thinking if this is a Flash movie, and I can 100% confirm it is a Flash film just because Supergirl's in it. And of course you have Michael Keaton's Batman. It still is a Flash movie through and through. And speaking of Michael Keaton, just him coming back playing Batman at his age, it was great. Every time he showed up, the old Batman theme. And while I did grow up watching Batman and Batman Returns, they're not my favorite version of the character, but I still had an enjoyable time every time he was on screen, even though he didn't have a large presence in the film in terms of screen time. But there are some things I just did not like. The CGI was just downright awful. I was like, what the hell happened? It was like PS3 graphics, and every time it showed up, it took me out of the movie. I get that it was trying to make it different, but you really couldn't make CGI look better. Alright, there's good CGI and there's bad CGI. And I'm not saying all the CGI in this film was awful, but some of it was very noticeably bad. And I know this film was over 2.5 hours just about, but not one time was I bored with this film. Not one time I was saying, can this thing please, hurry up. If anything, the third act's a little weak. It's typical comic book superhero stuff. But when it comes down to it, this movie is entertaining in certain spots. And sometimes, they overdo it with the humor. I mean, this movie is funny, but a film that, a character that can run at supersonic speeds, they actually did that real well, with that CGI. I actually felt the speed watching the film. Now, the Easter eggs were cool, they weren't overdone, and there were some nice surprises in this one. At the end of the day, while I wouldn't call this one of my favorite DC films, it is fun, it has its heartfelt emotional moments, but most importantly, had this film made its original release date, then maybe we would have gotten a sequel. But due to Ezra Miller's personal life, and of course James Gunn soon to come in with the DCU, this movie really doesn't matter, but as a comic book standalone film, it certainly has its entertaining aspects to it. Definitely check this one out if you haven't seen it already because it is well worth the time. I'm giving this film a 7 out of 10. This is the most fun I had with a DC movie in quite some time. It's quite unfortunate this is pretty much the end of the DCEU with Aquaman 2 come out in a couple months. But at least this movie was more enjoyable than I thought initially going in, and I'm quite glad that this film had so many good things to offer compared to the issues that I did have with it. And that's my review of The Flash. Okay, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this movie if you have seen it. Alright, this is Slim Guy 172 saying peace out.